Created by John Byrne, the Canadian team known as Alpha Flight first appeared in 1979's Uncanny X-Men issue 120. Talk about Alpha Flight is heating up once again. Alpha Flight has nearly 40 years of history and a decent-sized roster, so in the interest of brevity, we'll primarily focus on the core original team, a team beloved by John Byrne fans, Canadian fans, X-Men fans, and everyone in between, so let's talk about them. But before we do, let me say thank you for watching JL's Comics, whether you've been with me for a while or it's your first time here. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and share it so you and your friends don't miss the content I upload just like this every few days. Let's jump into the story. And our story starts with Mac, the young James MacDonald Hudson of Ontario, Canada. The Hudson family has been tied to Weapon X and the Weapons Plus program since its infancy in the days before World War I. In fact, James Hudson and Logan, that's Wolverine, are cousins. It was one of Hudson's relatives who found Mr. Sinister's lab and brought the tech to North America, which was later used by the Central Intelligence Agency. Hudson's father, Truett, was part of the Canadian Department K Weapon X program, which had at one time captured Logan and subjected him to biogenetic experimentation. But James himself worked in the private sector as an engineer for Amcan Petrochemical under Jerome Jackson, one of the petrol company's EVPs. Hudson developed a special powered suit called a terraforming exoskeleton intended for geological exploration and excavation. Mac learned that Jackson was actually going to weaponize and then sell the suit to the US military. Horrified, he destroyed Amcan's prototypes and blueprints, resigned, and took it all for himself. Hudson's secretary at Amcan, Heather McNeil, who would later become Heather Hudson, also resigned and quickly arranged a meeting with officials from the Canadian government. And the Prime Minister was impressed by the suit that Mac had developed, and so they paid off Amcan and invited him to work for the Ministry of Defense to develop an advanced R&D branch, which would come to be known as Department H. Inspired by the appearance of America's Fantastic Four, one of his projects was to develop a covert superhero team. The first incarnation was called The Flight, named presumably after the military designation for a group of planes, a group smaller than a squadron. Hudson took that bulky proto-tech to make his own suit, becoming leader of the fledgling team, flight commander if you will. He called himself Weapon Alpha at first, something that writer Chris Claremont came up with after Byrne's original name idea of Guardian was rejected by Marvel due to the fact that Guardians of the Galaxy was being published at the time. He later be called Vindicator, something Chris Claremont also came up with, naming him after the airplane of the same name. Heather and James found Logan roaming the Canadian countryside more, as they said, feral than human. So unaware that Logan was actually his cousin, Hudson brought him in as one of the first members of the new team. A few thousand years before the start of the team, an extra-dimensional great beast known as Tundra fought the Inuit goddess Nelvana. Nelvana, trapped, was able to escape and go to Earth to mate with a human, and she found Richard Easton, and together they made a baby named Naria, also known as Snowbird. A shaman from the First Nations named Michael Tuyungman, later named Shaman, assisted with Snowbird's birth and subsequent upbringing. She got the alias of a RCMP officer named Anne Mackenzie, still with her powers to change into any Arctic beast she wants. Heather and James Hudson visited Shaman to recruit him for the new team, and Snowbird. They knew of Shaman because he'd put his biological daughter Elizabeth in their care many years prior, and Elizabeth would join the team later as the hero Talisman. Walter Langowski grew up in British Columbia. Walter met a man named Bruce Banner while beginning his doctorate at Penn State, where he began his research into gamma radiation. And one time, Walter was actually bombarded with energy from his experiments and transformed into a massive creature that would come to be known as Sasquatch. Snowbird, Guardian, and Shaman are characters that Byrne had created as a fan years before becoming a professional, although Shaman was originally named Chinook. On one of Wolverine's early missions, he saved a girl named Jean-Marie Bobier from muggers and ended up recruiting her and her twin brother, the ski champion named Jean-Paul, to the team, and they became Aurora and Northstar. This new team now formed together was actually lacking in depth at first. After a near disaster with The Flight, Hudson made Alpha, Beta, and Gamma teams to farm and train members for field work instead of bringing everyone into the field all at once. They were intended to be able to be one of the few teams who could actually fight the formidable X-Men. Byrne added Sasquatch to counter Colossus and gave him the mental capacity to counter Beast. Shaman was a weather controller to foil Storm. Aurora and Northstar countered both Nightcrawler, and as twins, both Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Then you had the Flyers, like all teams have, while Vindicator, aka Guardian, is a leader like Cyclops is also a great deal like Reed Richards. And newer heroes like Puck, as Byrne described him in a fanzine called Amazing Heroes, essentially was Wolverine's replacement, his surrogate. Puck's a 3'6", 200-pound fighter who likes to brawl, do cartwheels, and crash into things. The team is also noted because of its diverse group of characters. You have Northstar, who's gay, his sister Aurora with dissociative identity disorder. You have Native American, First Nation, Inuit representation, Jewish representation, and Puck with dwarfism, all on the same team. It aligns with Marvel's directive for The World Outside the Window and Feige's directive for the MCU. Hudson continued his recruiting, pulling in members from Beta and Gamma Flight, such as Marrina, an aquatic amphibious-powered being from the Plodex alien species that was recruited to the team at just 16 years old and assigned to Gamma Flight. Marrina would rise up through Beta and graduate to Alpha Flight, but only for a short period of time, as she would leave to join her future husband, Namor. It wasn't long after the flight's first few missions that Wolverine left and headed to America. In an interview, John Byrne said, Chris Claremont mentioned that Dave Cockrum had an idea that the Canadian government probably would not be too thrilled to see their multi-million-dollar investment, Wolverine, head south. Surely, he suggested, Ottawa would send somebody, perhaps even a team, to get him back. And this conversation occurred just before issue 108, Byrne's first time on the Uncanny X-Men title after Dave Cockrum left. Uncanny X-Men issue 109 is the issue where the government sent James Hudson, calling himself Weapon Alpha, to retrieve their asset. Banshee also called Hudson Major Maple Leaf, although a real Major Maple Leaf would debut in Alpha Flight 106. But they fought unsuccessfully, and Hudson went back to Canada empty-handed. So in X-Men issues 120 and 121, Weapon Alpha took the whole Alpha Flight team to try to bring Wolverine back again, unsuccessfully. They met him again in issues 139 and 140, which found Wolverine and Alpha Flight fighting Wendigo. And it was shortly after this that the Canadian Prime Minister, Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, informed Hudson that both Alpha Flight and Department H were being disbanded. He said they would remain on as an auxiliary component of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And this also went for the rookies on Beta Flight and the trainees on Gamma Flight. 1983's Alpha Flight issue number 1 opened with the power in the team's headquarters beneath Parliament Hill in Ottawa being shut down as they were formally stood down by the government. A few weeks later, now settled into their new retirement routines, a disturbance in Resolute Bay called James Hudson with his new upgraded power suit that Chris Claremont said makes him a quote-unquote artificial Magneto, and now calling himself Vindicator, back to action. His wife Heather opened a secret room behind a bookcase and reactivated the team, also activating Marrina and Puck from Beta Flight. The team met up in the tundra of Canada's Northwest Territories to defeat Tundra, a great beast summoned to life from the tundra itself by Snowbird's insane father, Easton. Tundra rose up from the ground in an eerie, horrific, immortal Hulk sort of way. And in issue 2, we actually meet Ishu, the master of the world, a caveman who would come to be linked to a crashed Plodex alien spacecraft. It was through this link to Marrina, who's from the Plodex species herself, that he ran into Alpha Flight for the first time, as he had held Marrina captive. Marrina joined the team along with Puck. Oh, and Vindicator's name was changed to Guardian, now approved by Marvel since Guardians of the Galaxy was no longer a conflicting issue. And Byrne said in Marvel Age issue 2, as far as I'm concerned, Canada doesn't have anything to vindicate. Guardian was one of his fan creations, so he got his name changed even after Big Jim Shooter and Marvel initially told him no. He'd had to change his costume too because the original design looked too much like Captain Canuck. In issue 11, we meet Omega Flight, a team assembled by Jerome Jackson, and who would be foils to and villains of Alpha Flight over the years. And in issue 12, while battling Omega Flight, Guardian's suit overloaded and exploded, killing him, allegedly. So his wife assumed the mantle and took the name to honor her fallen husband, and she took over the leadership role of the team. Byrne said Guardian was the least interesting, least developed character, but his death would open up some interesting subplots and arcs to follow. And this is when the government came back to fund the team, and their base of operations moved from Ottawa to Tamarind Island in British Columbia. In issue 24, we meet the rest of the extra-dimensional great beasts. We meet a couple of them, such as Tundra in issue 1, as they arose throughout Canada. Tanarak the Conqueror, one of the great beasts, bonded with Sasquatch's soul after he tried to become another Hulk, and Alpha Flight had to actually go to the realm of the beasts to save Walter, Sasquatch, and bring him back to their dimension. Interestingly, he shows up in Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk series to this day. Box also joined the team in this issue, called up from Beta Flight as he was depicted in issue 1, though he would die a few issues later in issue 49. Heather kept running into trouble, and so she developed her own suit from her husband's tech. So Wolverine ends up training Heather, and in issue 34, they had to team up together to take down Lady Deathstrike. After this victory, Heather took on the name Vindicator. Issue 51 of the series was Jim Lee's first artwork at Marvel Comics. Byrne had left the series with issue 28, and yet it would go on to last another 102 issues, finally drawing to a close in 1994. The demon Belasco's daughter Witchfire, foil to magic and wannabe ruler of Limbo, joined the team in issue 76. And it turns out that Hudson didn't die. His suit explosion actually caused him to be sucked into a dimensional rift, and an alien species on the other side found him and turned him into a cyborg. So he came back in issue 89. Heather stood down so he could be Guardian again. As a cyborg, he was able to save the team during a battle with Galactus. Windshear joined the team in issue 95, and Weapon Omega joined in issue 102. And while it had been alluded to for quite some time, it wouldn't be until 1992's issue 106 when Northstar was finally able to say he was gay. In issue 110, we meet another iteration of Omega Flight, this time founded by Ishu, the Master of the World. In the final couple of issues, Ishu nearly took control of the government of Canada, and he brainwashed James Hudson into leading the team as anti-guard. Ishu faked his own death and would return much later in 2011's fourth volume to found another team, Omega Flight, a team assembled to take down Alpha Flight and promote the Unity Party's Unity program. Anyway, in the final issue, which was 130, Alpha Flight was disbanded, and the team Weapon Prime replaced them. But James' programming erased Ishu's brainwashing, and that's when he learned that the government had nefarious reasons for backing Department H once again, so they hotwired his armor and shot him into space and replaced him on Earth with a clone. There was another volume in 1997 which featured Heather as Vindicator, along with Clone Guardian and a few other new recruits like Flex, Murmur, Manbot, and Radius, and a real Sasquatch, not Dr. Langowski. Eventually the real Guardian came back, and his clone made the ultimate sacrifice. 2004's iteration of the team was assembled by Sasquatch and found Major Maple Leaf on the team along with Puck's daughter, Zuza, Union Jack, Nemesis, and Centennial. In 2007, a new Omega Flight formed in Canada as a response to heroes crossing the border from the USA who didn't want to register for the Superhuman Registration Act. That team consisted of Guardian, U.S. Agent, Sasquatch, Arachna, and Talisman, as well as help from unofficial member Beta Ray Bill, who helped them take down the Wrecking Crew. This group called the Collective had killed most of the team in 2005's New Avengers 16 as they were trying to prevent the Collective from entering Canada, which is part of the Chaos War. And due to the Chaos King and what his followers were doing in the Death Realm, Guardian, Vindicator, Shaman, and Marrina were resurrected and reunited with the rest of the team. In 2015's Zero issue of Volume 6 of Avengers, we meet a new iteration of Alpha Flight, and this Alpha Flight is led by Commander Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, with Abigail Brand of S.W.O.R.D. as her XO. They were stationed on the Alpha Flight low-orbit space station as part of the Alpha Flight space program. They were ruled by representatives of nations and worlds supporting the venture, dubbed the Board of Governors, although they were disbanded pretty quickly after it was discovered that Canada's representative was actually Ishu in disguise. He keeps coming back. The directive was to stop interstellar threats from reaching Earth. They ended up working closely with the Ultimates, Blue Marvel, Monica Rambeau as Spectrum, and America Chavez. Guardian did appear in the future in Old Man Logan, where he was helping save Nova Scotia along with Wolverine from an alien invasion, but it was 2019's Alpha Flight True North #1 when we see him in Snowbird most recently. Both Northstar and Aurora are in 2020's X Factor book, both of them on the island of Krakoa. Sasquatch has been popping up in Immortal Hulk, as I said, bringing new meaning to Gamma Flight, and Shaman just appeared in Strange Academy, so they may not be all together right now, but they're certainly very present in current storylines, and that's how we leave them in the comic books today. And where will they show up next? Do you want to see Alpha Flight show up in the MCU? Do you want it to be a movie, or do you want it to be on streaming on Disney Plus? And who would you like them to fight? The Winter Guard, Lady Deathstrike, Ogun, perhaps Omega Red, Omega Flight, the Master of the World, the Great Beast like Tundra? Or would you like to see them as part of the Hulk vs. Wolverine saga? Sound off in the comment section below and we'll continue the conversation there. For now, that's a wrap on this one, my friends. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so you can be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this each and every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.